everything you remember is a lie. That childhood memory you cherish, it's a hallucination. Your brain is a desperate editor, scrubbing away the glitches and rewriting your history in real time just to keep your sanity intact. You aren't a person with a past. You are a ghost inhabiting a beautifully crafted fiction. Now, before you close this video, stick with me, because what I'm about to share with you is not depressing. It is actually one of the most freeing things you will ever hear. Because if your memory is a story, and science says it absolutely is, then you have more power over your past, your present, and your future than you ever thought possible. Let's talk about it. Most of us walk around assuming our memories work like a camera. Something happens, the brain records it, and when we want to remember it, we press play and watch the footage back. That is not even close to how memory works. Here's what's actually happening. Every single time you recall a memory, your brain is not retrieving a stored file. It is reconstructing it from scratch, using whatever fragments it has available and filling in the gaps with logic, emotion, and expectation. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus has spent decades studying this. Her research showed that memories can be altered, implanted, and completely fabricated, not by trauma, not by brain damage, but simply by the way a question is asked. In one famous study, people who witnessed a car accident were asked either how fast were the cars going when they hit each other, or how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. The single word change, hit versus smashed, caused people to remember the crash as significantly faster and to later falsely remember seeing broken glass that was never there. One word, that's all it took to rewrite a memory. And this isn't just happening in psychology labs, it is happening inside your head every single day. Every time you remember something, you are subtly editing it. Your current mood changes the memory. Your current beliefs change the memory. The story you tell yourself about who you are changes the memory. Your brain is not a camera, it is a screenwriter, and it has been rewriting your life story since the day you were born. There's a concept in psychology and behavioral economics called the narrative fallacy. It was popularized by Nassim Nicholas Taleb in his book The Black Swan, and it describes something we all do without realizing it. We take the random, chaotic, disconnected events of our lives and we stitch them together into a clean, logical story. A story with a beginning, a middle, a direction. A story where things happen for reasons, where we are the hero, or sometimes the victim, of a coherent plot. But here's the thing. Life is not a coherent plot. Life is a series of accidents, coincidences, missed chances, and unexpected turns. The story is something we impose on top of it afterward. Think about your own origin story for a second. The story you tell about why you are the way you are. Maybe it's something like, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, so I learned to be resilient. Or, my parents never believed in me, so I've always struggled with confidence. Or, I had an amazing teacher who changed my life, and that's why I love learning. These stories feel true. They feel real. They feel like explanations, but they are interpretations. And there is a big difference between an explanation and an interpretation. An explanation is fixed. It happened, it caused this, end of story. An interpretation is flexible. It happened, and here is the meaning I have chosen to attach to it. The narrative fallacy is the reason two people can grow up in identical circumstances and turn out completely differently. One person looks back at a difficult childhood and says, that hardship made me who I am, and I'm grateful for it. Another looks at the exact same childhood and says, that hardship broke something in me that I've never been able to fix. Same events, completely different stories, completely different lives. Here's where it gets really personal and really practical. Most of us are living inside an origin story we wrote a long time ago, often in childhood, often during a moment of pain or confusion or fear, and we have been unconsciously treating that story as fact ever since. Let me give you some examples of what this looks like in real life. Maybe when you were 8 years old, you stood up in class to answer a question and got it wrong. Everyone laughed. Your teacher moved on without acknowledging you. And in that moment, your 8-year-old brain wrote a story. The story was, I am not smart. I am someone who gets things wrong. It is safer to stay quiet. That story is now 30 years old, but you are still living by it. You still hesitate to speak up in meetings. You still feel a flash of shame when you make a mistake. You still assume other people are smarter than you. Or maybe you grew up watching your parents argue about money, and your young brain wrote a story. Money causes pain. Money destroys relationships. People who chase money are dangerous. And now, without even realizing it, you self-sabotage every time you get close to financial success, because somewhere deep in your narrative, success is a threat. These are self-limiting beliefs, and they are not truths. They are old stories written by younger, less experienced versions of you in moments of stress or confusion, being treated as permanent facts about who you are and what you deserve. The first step to breaking free from them is shockingly simple. Question the story. Not attack it, not reject it, just question it. Ask yourself, is this actually true? Or is this an interpretation I made at a specific moment in time with the limited understanding I had then? Ask, if I were to tell this same story from a different angle, what would I notice that I've been ignoring? Ask, who would I be right now, today, if I had never decided this story was true? These are not easy questions, but they are the right ones.
So, how do you actually do this? How do you take a story that has been hardwired into your identity and begin to consciously revise it? Here's a simple 3-step framework. Think of it as editing your own screenplay. Step 1. Find the scene. Every self-limiting belief has an origin moment, a specific scene in your past where the story was first written. You may not remember it consciously, but it's there. Start by identifying the belief itself. Maybe it's, I am not lovable. I am bad with money. I always fail when it matters most. I don't deserve success. Once you have the belief, ask, when did I first feel this way? Where was I? How old was I? What happened? You're looking for the scene where your brain first wrote this particular story. Step 2. Interrogate the narrator. Here's something worth remembering. The narrator of that original scene was a child, or a teenager, or a younger version of you going through something painful and confusing. That narrator was doing their best, but they were not an objective reporter. They were scared, they were hurt, they were making meaning out of chaos the only way they knew how. So interrogate that narrator. Ask, what did they miss? What context didn't they have? What would an older, wiser, more compassionate version of you say about that same moment? You are not trying to pretend the painful thing didn't happen. You are recognizing that the meaning you attached to it was a choice, even if it didn't feel like one at the time. Step 3. Write a new scene. This is the most powerful step, and the most uncomfortable one. Rewrite the story. Not by lying to yourself, not by pretending bad things were secretly good, but by consciously choosing a different interpretation, one that is equally true, equally supported by the facts, but that serves you instead of limiting you. Instead of, my parents didn't believe in me, so I've always struggled with confidence, try, my parents didn't believe in me, and I learned very early that I had to become my own source of validation. That is not a weakness, that is a skill. Instead of, I failed at that business and proved I'm not cut out for entrepreneurship, try, I failed at that business and got an education that no school could have given me. Same facts, different story, different identity, different future.
Here is the part I want you to sit with. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a memory and a vividly imagined experience. This has been demonstrated in neuroimaging studies. The same regions of the brain light up whether you are remembering something that happened or vividly visualizing something that hasn't happened yet. What this means, practically,
tangibly is that the stories you tell about your past are shaping the neural pathways of your brain right now. And if you change the stories, you change the pathways. This is not motivational poster stuff. This is neuroscience. When you repeatedly rehearse a story about being someone who fails, your brain builds and reinforces the neural architecture of a person who fails. When you rehearse a story about being someone who learns, adapts, and grows, your brain builds the architecture of that person instead. You are not stuck with the story you were handed. You are not a passive character in a narrative someone else wrote for you, a difficult parent, a cruel teacher, a society that told you what you were worth. You are the author. You always were. You just didn't know you had the pen.
So let's come back to where we started. Everything you remember is a lie. Your brain is a desperate editor, rewriting your history in real time. But here is what I didn't tell you at the beginning. That editor, that relentless, tireless, creative editor, is working for you. It has always been working for you. Every rewrite, every revision, every reconstruction, it is all in service of one goal: helping you make sense of a world and survive in it. The problem was never that your brain tells stories. The problem is that we forget that's what it's doing, and we start mistaking the story for the truth. Once you know the story is a story, everything changes. You can look at the painful chapters with curiosity instead of shame. You can question the villain you were told you were, or the victim. You can pick up the pen and write something different. Not a perfect story, not a false one, but an honest one, written by the person you are today, not the frightened child who first picked up that pen in the dark. Your memory is a story you tell yourself, so tell a better one.
Thank you for watching. If this video made you look at your own story a little differently, that's exactly what it was meant to do. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into the science of identity, memory, and the stories we tell ourselves, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from. I'll see you in the next one.